In his work on liberty, John Stuart Mill wrote,
"He who knows only his own side of the case knows little of that. His reasons may be good, and no one may have been able to refute them. But if he is equally unable to refute the reasons on the opposite side, if he does not so much as know what they are, he has no ground for preferring either opinion. Nor is it enough that he should hear the opinions of adversaries from his own teachers, presented as they state them, and accompanied by what they offer as refutations. He must be able to hear them from persons who actually believe them. He must know them in their most plausible and persuasive form."
Although queer theory appears to many to have had a massive influence on the psychology of a generation of young people, no one is allowed to talk about it. It is an interesting psychological observation that those who evidently experienced homophobia when they were young and have fought against it are the most vocal in support of trans rights. The evident empathy they feel for trans people based on their own experience seems to give them a conviction that overrides any rational faculties. On the Welsh Government LGBTQ+ expert panel responsible for creating the LGBTQ+ action plan, all but Professor Reynolds, it seems, are either gay or trans. Lou Thomas was chair of the panel. Thomas is a former chair of Pride Cymru. At a Pride Cymru rally in 2018, she rallied a crowd in support of the reform of the Gender Recognition Act.
Support us or lose us is my message to you. Now I hear from some of you in the community that you're not political. You don't understand politics and you don't like to get involved. I understand that. God knows the world of politics is currently a very messed up state. But the thing is, you are political, even if you don't know it. Holding hands in public is political. Kissing your partner
Thomas has been very critical of those who hold contrary views.
Being dragged into turf top twattery again. Listen, ladies, I find the best way to not be branded a bigot is to not be a fucking bigot. Fuck off, Molly, you daft turf. I mean, if this twisted obsession with trans women isn't a full-blown mental disorder, just look at the state of this. I think all transphobes should be legally required to identify themselves on dating websites. Hashtag, there, fixed it for you. Hashtag, wankers. There's been a persistent and repulsive net of TERFs in Cardiff Central constituency Labour Party for quite some time. Hashtag expel them and their hate-fueled poison. They bring nothing but shame to the hashtag Labour Party.
In 2021, she was quoted on a Welsh Government media release.
Ministers have continually used the phrase, progress is never inevitable. And with the release of the consultation today, it clearly shows the Welsh Government is committed to achieving real progress in our society. Our report deliberately gives a focus to intersectionality, ensuring that all areas of government pull together with stakeholders, community groups, and individuals from across our society to engage and contribute to the plan. It's only by uniting as a nation can we achieve real progress and deliver a fairer and more equal society in Wales.
Unity is rarely achieved by abusing those who hold contrary viewpoints. It may be that Thomas is a great supporter of queer theory. It may be that she really believes that people can be born in the wrong body. It is impossible to tell. Nevertheless, Thomas has strong convictions. Thomas was one of 3 expert witnesses who advised the Vale of Glamorgan Council, who adopted a transgender toolkit in 2018. The cover of the toolkit states, "The body we are born into does not define who we are." The toolkit was approved by Stonewall Cymru. The toolkit stated,
Scenario 1. My daughter doesn't want a boy changing next to her. What if he looks at her body? A human rights response would be to state that although the individual in question may have the body of a boy, they are, in every other respect, a girl, and as such have the right, under the Equality Act, to change with the girls and to be treated fairly as such.
This is both unscientific and incorrect. The toolkit has been subsequently updated. On their list of LGBTQ+ inclusive books for children ages 5 to 7, Stonewall listed I Am Jazz. Their website stated, "Jazz was born with a girl's brain in a boy's body. This confuses her family until they go to see a doctor who tells them that Jazz was transgender and she had been born that way." The idea that we can be born in the wrong body does not sound scientific. We all, after all, have one body. How can it be wrong? The only way it can be wrong is if unstereotypical behaviour is compared unfavourably to others. An article titled "Pubertal Delay as an Aid in Diagnosis and Treatment of a Transsexual Adolescent" was published in the journal European Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. The article described the very first use of puberty blockers on a child known as B, struggling with gender dysphoria. The authors were Peggy Cohen-Kettenis and Stephanie Van Hoosen, pronouns she, her, now a lecturer at Cardiff University. In a video, Michael Biggs from the University of Oxford talks about the clinicians Louise Van Huren and Peggy Cohen-Kettenis, who he describes as the father and mother of puberty blockers.
So we could begin by trying to understand what motivated these clinicians, the father and the mother of puberty blockers. Well, Huren believed that some people are born with a brain of the opposite sex. So he stood in the long tradition, started with John Money, who invented the notion of gender in the 1950s, the notion that transsexualism was kind of like an intersex condition, what we'd now call a disorder of sexual development. So the argument goes that you can't change someone's brain, so you have to change their body to match their brain. That's the only solution. For Cohen-Kettenis, the motivation was a bit more practical. She ran a gender clinic for young people in Utrecht, and she'd begun to lower the age for cross-sex hormones from 18 down to 16. And her findings, she argued, was that it was much better to start younger. Transsexuals who started earlier were more likely to pass, and as a result, they were much happier, much better, more well-adjusted. So, of course, logically, the next step was to lower the age further. Hence, what became the Dutch protocol. So, under this protocol, at the age of 12, a child will become eligible for puberty blockers. At 16, the child would go into cross-sex hormones. And at 18, they would go for their surgeries. And in the Netherlands, genital surgery was standard. So there's a really kind of a very straightforward conveyor belt. Puberty blockers, hormones, surgery. Now, Dutch clinicians were aware, because they were starting young, they did say that they imposed quite strict eligibility criteria for puberty blockers. First, the gender dysphoria should have begun early in childhood. How they would actually know that is unclear. Presumably they'd have to rely on the patient's own recollection and the family's recollection. Also, the dysphoria should have become worse with the onset of puberty. Second, the patient should be psychologically stable and not suffer from other mental health problems. And third, the patient needed to have the support and approval of their family. So these eligibility criteria were usually forgotten when the Dutch protocol was adopted in other countries. What was taken was simply the idea of puberty blockers at 12. And in other countries, the age of 12 was soon reduced because, after all, some children start puberty earlier, and so you need to go younger than 12. In England, for example, the youngest so far is 10 years old. One more thing about the Dutch protocol is that Ferring Pharmaceuticals was remarkably generous with financial support, and that, of course, is the company that manufactures triptorelin. So let's look a little more closely at the Dutch protocol. So the first thing is the connection between gender dysphoria and homosexuality. In Huren's first article on puberty blockers, there's an intriguing statement. Not all children with gender atypicality will turn out to be transsexuals later in life. Several prospective studies in gender atypical boys show that this childhood behavior correlates considerably stronger with future homosexuality than with transsexualism. So doesn't that raise the prospect that most of Huren's juvenile transsexuals are really homosexuals to be, or homosexuals in waiting? The passage continues with something that seems to be a non sequitur. Some of the youngsters will turn out to be genuinely transsexual in their mid-teens. But that's some, not all. And starting at 12 means starting, of course, before the mid-teens. Yet the claim is that there is no reasonable expectation that their cross-sex gender identity will ever more change. Here they cite articles by Cohen-Kettenis, which actually don't provide any evidence that cross-sex gender identity never changes. It just simply describes how she is operating her clinic. in Utrecht. So a later review article by Cohen-Kettenis and S.H.M repeat the same point. Not all children with gender identity disorder, and that's just the earlier term for what we now call gender dysphoria, not all children with gender dysphoria will turn out to be transsexuals after puberty. Prospective studies of gender dysphoric boys show that this phenomenon is more closely related to later homosexuality. Again, the same kind of puzzle. And this puzzle has never, as far as I tell, been tackled. So it would be nice to know how practitioners of gender medicine distinguish a transsexual from a homosexual. One path requires lifelong medical treatment, the other does not.
In the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual version 4, published in 1995, it states,
For clinically referred children, onset of cross-gender interests and activities is usually between ages 2 and 4 years, and some parents report that their child has always had cross-gender interests. Only a very small number of children with gender identity disorder will continue to have symptoms that meet criteria for gender identity disorder in later adolescence or adulthood. Typically, children are referred around the time of school entry because of parental concern that what they regarded as a phase does not appear to be passing. Most children with gender identity disorder display less overt cross-gender behaviours with time, parental intervention, or response from peers. By late adolescence or adulthood, about 3/4 of boys who had a childhood history of gender identity disorder report a homosexual or bisexual orientation, but without concurrent gender identity disorder.
The DSM also describes an entirely different way into gender dysphoria.
The paraphiliac focus of transvestic fetishism involves cross-dressing. Usually the male with transvestic fetishism keeps a collection of female clothes that he intermittently uses to cross-dress. While cross-dressed, he usually masturbates, imagining himself to be both the male subject and the female object of his sexual fantasy.
Dr. Ray Blanchard coined the term autogynephilia, love of oneself as a woman, as a more general term to describe this condition. In the book Men Trapped in Men's Bodies, trans-identified male Anne Lawrence describes the existential crisis of the autogynephilic male.
Consider the plight of the man who experiences anatomic autogynephilia and severe gender dysphoria. Since early childhood, he has secretly wished to be a female. He is erotically aroused by women and is also erotically aroused by the idea of being a woman himself. In both cases, however, his feelings go far beyond the simple erotic arousal. He admires women, finds them beautiful, adores their bodies, and habitually falls in love with them. He also envies them and wants to embody all the admirable, beautiful features he loves in them. He wants to live in a body like theirs and lead a life like theirs. At the same time, he knows that he is not naturally feminine. When he considers the adjectives that describe the women he habitually falls in love with, agreeable, affiliative, cooperative, empathetic, gentle, graceful, nurturant, pliant, tactful, tender, he realizes that most of these adjectives do not describe him. He tends to be competitive, dominant, independent, linear, logical, and tough-minded. He might wish he were more feminine, but his personality is not naturally feminine. When he is honest with himself, he also realizes that he never falls in love with men and only feels attracted to men when he is in the midst of an autogynephilic reverie. He has cross-dressed for years and still does at times, but he finds that it offers him limited satisfaction. Even wearing sexy women's attire, he still inhabits his unwanted male body and still has his ugly, embarrassing male genitalia. Falling in love with a woman or having sex with a woman sometimes makes his autogynephilic desires go into remission for a time. But these remissions are always temporary. His autogynephilic feelings always return, and every time he has an orgasm, he is reminded of two facts. Having a woman's body is the most erotic thing he can imagine, and he doesn't have one. His circumstances force him to consider the existential question: could he live a happier, more meaningful, more rewarding life as a woman, as a transsexual woman, or would he be better off continuing to live as a man? This is a genuine dilemma because neither option is really satisfactory. Continuing to live as a man would be the easier, less expensive, and safer option. That way he could keep his job, his reputation, his friends, and perhaps his marriage if he has one. Continuing to live as a man wouldn't kill him. He has, after all, done it for years. He could continue to live a life of quiet desperation, but he would still experience significant and often severe gender dysphoria, perhaps every day of his life. Eventually, he would become an old man who would never try to live his dream. He knows that what older adults invariably regret is not what they have done, but what they failed to do when they had the opportunity. The thought of wasting the only life he will ever have is sad and frightening. Alternatively, he could pursue sex reassignment. That way, he could at least tell himself that he had tried to live his dream, and if he were to succeed in some measure, how great would that be? How many people can say that they achieved in some measure what they wanted most? If he successfully transitioned, he would finally be playing on the right team, the women's team, and those awful male genitalia would be gone forever. But he also knows that he would never have a normal life as a woman. He would always be an oddity, albeit perhaps a fascinating or even admirable oddity, and he could easily lose any of the things that currently make his life comfortable and safe: his job, his reputation, his friends, his family. Moreover, the kind of womanhood he could achieve would inevitably be shoddy and inadequate. He would never be able to completely erase the masculinizing effects of testosterone on his body and brain, nor the masculinizing effects of decades of living in society as a man. For an autogynephilic, gender dysphoric man to be willing to try to rebuild his life around his paraphilia by pursuing sex reassignment, despite the genuine risks and inevitable limitations involved, he usually needs to be both very brave and very desperate.
Two trans members of the LGBTQ+ expert panel are very supportive of the use of puberty blockers.
Non-timely intervention for trans young people can be a lifelong tragedy. And I just wanted to say that, yes, the vast majority just need socialization and support and talk. But at Tanner stage 2, there is a very limited window of opportunity to prevent long-term damage from inappropriate puberty. And that's where puberty blockers are essential. And those puberty blockers really need to be prescribed at the onset of Tanner stage 2. For those of you that don't know in detail what the Tanner stages are, Tanner stage 2 is the first visible signs of puberty.
Regarding puberty blockers, the interim Cass report stated that the available evidence was not strong enough to form the basis of a policy position. The final report was published in April 2024. Dr. Cass criticised the ideological beliefs that had influenced children's care.
And I think it's definitely the case that ideology on all sides has directed care rather than care being directed by normal principles of paediatrics and mental health. I mean, certainly professionals are afraid to do the things that they would normally do in any other consultation with a young person, and that can't be right. I know this is very difficult and very stressful for school staff and for families. So I do hope that the government will find a way through that gives more reassurance to both.
In a letter from expert feminist academics, it was suggested that the Cass review contained unsound methodology that will be harmful to trans children. The letter was signed by Melissa Martin of Cardiff University, Sophie Quinney, and Meg-John Barker, the author of the article in the Agenda resource produced by Professor Reynolds that suggested concern about the affirmation model of dealing with children with gender dysphoria was part of a moral panic. Lisa Cordery-Bruce from the LGBTQ+ expert panel retweeted a tweet stating, "Fuck the Cass report," as did Lisa Power. Power tweeted assertions that the Cass report contained a number of methodological flaws. Hutchinson reposted a tweet claiming that the Cass review was bad science. Hutchinson was disappointed with Stonewall. Burton complained that Hilary Cass totally discounted knowledge based on his lived experience. Katie Baskerville, Communications Officer of Women Equality Network Wales, tweeted a must-read of reputable organisations that criticised the Cass report. In May 2025, the BMC Medical Research Methodology published an article claiming that there were methodological flaws and unsupported claims in the Cass report. The authors included Alex Southgate from Cardiff University School of Physics and Astronomy and Thomas Woolley from Cardiff University School of Mathematics. Eluned Morgan issued a statement.
I want to focus my comments in today's debate on setting out the work we're involved with to improve gender identity services for children and young people in Wales, in line with both the LGBTQ Action Plan and the Cass Review.
On the surface, that seems to be a bit of a challenge.
The LGBTQ+ Action Plan for Wales sets out our commitment to defend the dignity of trans and non-binary people and to deliver on our goal to make Wales the most LGBTQ+ friendly nation.
Minister, you need to conclude now.
Finally, I think it's important we bear in mind Dr. Cass's own words, that the surrounding noise and increasingly toxic, ideological and polarised debate has made the work of the review significantly harder.
We recommit ourselves to supporting trans and non-binary people, and our starting point is that trans men are men, trans women are women, and non-binary identities are valid.
Even in March 2025, Sioned Williams from Plaid Cymru and many of the Labour Senedd members appeared to agree.
You know who attacks women mainly? Straight men. That's who women are attacked by overwhelmingly. And if you're asking the question, what is a woman? I can tell you what a woman is. A woman is a woman and trans women are women.
The LGBTQ+ Action Plan includes a definition of the word gender derived not from the Oxford English Dictionary, but from queer theory.